Hi everyone. Today I'll be painting the 4 mech minis from the board game Scythe, specifically the white faction mech minis. Um, this whole process only takes me about 10 minutes for one miniature, and all up 40 minutes for the 4 of them. And I used a hairdryer in between to dry the paints in between each section, so that it really doesn't take long at all. Um, What you can see me doing first is priming the miniature. I'm using Vallejo white primer. This just helps paint stick to the plastic, as if you don't use this, it's quite likely that it will rub off during gameplay. Next up, we're doing the base coat. I'm using a light grey. This is primarily because white is really hard to paint with, whereas a light grey goes on easily and can be highlighted with white, making it stand out more. Um, you obviously can't go any brighter than white, so you have to start from some either grey or cream color. And I think in terms of mechs, painting them grey makes sense, even if you're in a snow environment, which I think these mechs would be. I'm just going to cover the whole model. I'm not being very careful because we'll come back and fix it up later with some black details. Um, but yeah, just cover the whole model. You can see I'm using a big brush, and I'm really not being careful with where I put it. Now we're going to go through and paint the black details. Um, I'm specifically going to be painting the guns as well as that cockpit area. Um, Trying to be a bit more careful here because you don't really want to go over the grey that you've already painted. But if you do, you can just fix it up. Um, just a quick touch up is absolutely part of the process. In terms of the cockpit, we're just going to paint the whole thing black. Don't worry about the little ridges, which will be grey. We'll go back and fix those later with the dry brushing. You just want to get black in those sort of the glass areas. You could do blue for this. It's sort of personal preference. If you want the glass to be blue, that's your call. I went for black just for a more unified look, and I think it turns out pretty well at the end. Now we're going to go through and do an all-over black wash. I'm using Nuln oil, real staple for beginner hobbyists. This will basically just bring out all those recesses and make it sort of look the way you'd expect a big mech to. You don't have to be very careful with this, you just don't want big pooling in the middle of armor panels, and you'll see as I go through, I'll do one big sort of wash all over, and then I'll come back with a slightly more dry brush to wick up any of those larger sections that have a big black pool in the middle of them. You really want to be making sure that it gets into the recesses and not onto the big flat panels. Now we're going to dry brush the model with white. This is how we're going to get our highlights on the model. You can sort of see how just by going over the front cockpit there, it's picking up all the ridges but leaving the black underneath. I think this is a great effect. It makes it look like you've actually highlighted each one of those, but in reality you've just gone over it with a makeup brush. You want to sort of go from top down, catching all the ridges. This will really help to bring out the detail of the model. It'll catch all those little rivets as well as the edges, which makes it look really impressive for very little effort. Now we're going to do a bit of weathering. You don't need to do this step. I think especially with the white miniatures, it looks quite good just after the highlighting, the dry brushing. But what I'm doing is I'm using a little sponge with a bit of silver paint and just sort of dabbing it over where you think the armor would have a bit of chipping on it. So I usually try and focus especially around the feet. Anything that moves in theory would have the paint rubbing off, as well as the ends of the cannons. I guess sliding shells in or shells coming out would damage the paint a little bit. And otherwise just doing it in a few other spots. Sometimes less is more, don't go overboard. And especially on this grey paint, it's quite hard to see, so it's not really a big deal, an important step. And here we have the finished minis. I think it's a really quick and easy process. All up, this took me, I think, 40 minutes. And I don't have much equipment. You can see everything I used is on my desk there. I think the colors we've chosen are really good for the game. It means you can very clearly see that it is the white team. And yeah, I mean, I'll go over and clean up that base afterwards with either some white or some black with a white rim. It's sort of your choice. Thanks for watching.